Thanks, Mac. Hi, Peter. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thanks.
Nice to virtually meet you and welcome to the Auburn Rotary Club's meeting. Um,
Thank you.
it's my understanding that you're going to be presenting about the Environmental Sustainability Rotary Action Group.
Yes.
So if you're ready, we can kick it over to you and you can start your presentation. One of our club members will make you the host of the meeting, after which you'll be able to start sharing your screen and share your PowerPoint presentation with the group.
Okay. Thanks. Thanks for having us. I say us to include Chuck Tomaselli. Chuck is a 30-year Rotarian who created and is leading the district Rotary Action Task Force. And so normally he would be giving a live Zoom presentation today, but this is not a normal day. Yesterday, Chuck had knee surgery, and today he's recovering from that. And so he's asked me as part of his leadership team to help in the presentation. So I wanted to make a few comments about my own connection to Rotary, the environment, and to Chuck. So Chuck, our friendship goes back for longer than he's been a Rotarian. And my connection to Rotary started when my son, Greg, was a Rotary exchange student in Japan. And after his Rotary year, he returned many times and he did graduate studies there and then became involved in an environmental organization. He created a project where he walked the length of Japan, interviewing farmers and foresters and fishermen. And his project was, he called it the, he wanted to create wisdom on how to have a sustainable planet. And he would write a report every day in the early days of the internet when school kids all over the world would follow his adventures. And they would give each other assignments, and it was quite exciting. And then when he came back to the States, he became involved in an organization where he's now the executive director of the Onondaga Earth Corps. They train inner city youth and leadership and the environment. And they've planted thousands of trees in the last few years, in addition to rain gardens and other things. So I became interested in the environment through my son's influence. Then a few years back, I gave a talk on the environment at my Toastmasters club. Now Toastmasters and Rotaries have a partnership. And Chuck came to that talk and became interested in the environment. And I also invited him to the Citizens Climate Lobby conference, which he'll tell you about in this presentation. And that sparked his interest in being more in action. So I want to comment a little bit about the presentation. What you'll be seeing is a recording of a live Zoom presentation to the DeWitt Club. And in this presentation, in the early part of the presentation, there'll be a video, and the sound is a little bit faint, but if you listen carefully, you'll be able to understand it all. Then after a certain part of the presentation, I'll stop my screen share and we'll engage with the chat for a bit, according to Chuck's instructions. Then after that, we'll complete the presentation and I'll be available for questions if there's time for that. So now I will share my screen. And let's see. Oops. sorry. Here we go. Here's Chuck
Good
Tomaselli.
afternoon, and thank you for having me be your speaker today. Welcome to a call for Rotarians to keep the conversation about climate change and environmental sustainability alive. Unlike other Rotary programs that are designed to inform you about a particular organization, a project, a cause, this talk is intended to be more than that. It's intended to be a call for action. If we were meeting together in person, you would receive a folder with the April 2019 cover of Rotary magazine, in which we'd have some materials that we'd be handing out to you. Inside the cover would be the conversation with then RI President Barry Rassin and his interview with the Rotarian. Also, this inside the folder would be one of these expressions of Rotary service cards. At a live meeting, you'd now be filling it out with your name and phone number. And if you handed it in, that would basically you would become one more of the Rotarians who are part of the task force. Later, we'll be taking a kind of a modified poll that will substitute for the use of the card. Inside the folder would be a number of other materials. ESRAG's trifold is shown in the bottom right-hand corner. The banners of areas six areas of focus. I don't know that there's one made yet, now that we have the environment as the seventh. Listing of ESRAG projects around the world, this is right up in here, as well as a resource sheet for information regarding the environmental matters. My favorite of all of these is the one in the lower left-hand corner. And if you look closely, you can see that toilet paper, if it's left in the ocean, it'll biodegrade in 2 to 4 weeks. Whereas if you get down farther, you can notice that fishing nets, which there's an abundance in the ocean, will take around 600 years to biodegrade. And of course, glass at the bottom just hangs around forever.
I love Rotary, and one of the things I love most about Rotary is that we are relevant. Rotarians tackle some of the biggest problems facing humanity. Our 6 areas of focus were clean water and sanitation, maternal and child health, basic education, literacy, economic development, disease prevention and treatment, and peace. These are some of the very biggest problems that humanity faces. We're doing great things. And it's all at risk because of our changing climate. There's going to be more and more flooding. There's going to be people displaced away from their homes. You know, economies suffer. You know, this is a big concern of the U.S. military because they know they're going to be called upon not only to help, but also because it's going to make state governments less stable. My dreams for the future is a sustainable planet and where children get the attention they need and be able to grow to be the beings they were meant to be. I love Rotary, and Rotary is just such a great organization because we bring people together. We bring Republicans and Democrats together. We bring Christians, Jews, Muslims together. Every culture can be found in Rotary. I mean, it's just the greatest organization in civil society. And it's going to take civil society to fix this problem. It's time for Rotary to begin the conversation.
So we're here today to take a look at taking action by becoming a RAG. And Rotary RAGs are Rotary Action Groups. Really talking about the environmental sustainability Rotary Action Group with a unique name of ESRAG. In general, RAGs are pretty useful and they're common, but they're very useful in cleaning up messes. ESRAG is all about cleaning up the mess that we got our planet into. The mission of ESRAG is to serve as a resource and an inspiration for all of Rotary. It's all about cleaning up the mess. And ESRAG's goal is to build awareness and inspire projects that will foster a sustainable environment for our planet. ESRAG's vision is to have all Rotary projects aim to be environmentally sustainable while using renewable technologies and emphasizing conservation and restoration of our planet's ecosystems. So before I get into a lot of details about ESRAG, you should know that my attention again is for this presentation. I'll be giving my own personal ESRAG story in an effort to touch, move, and inspire you to personally take action that supports the environment here in Central New York. Past RI President Barry Rassin, in the April 2019 issue of the Rotarian magazine, challenged Rotary to start the conversation that as climate change is Rotary's business. So let's do our part. Let's keep the conversation alive. Climate change is personal to each one of us worldwide. Specifically, it's about you and making ESRAG personal to you. Yes, it's putting the Y for you in ESRAG and making it YesRAG, your Rotary Environmental Sustainability Rotary Action Group. When Nikki introduced me, she mentioned my name's Chuck Tomaselli. I'm with the New Hartford Rotary Club. I've recently turned 77, and this is a photo of my son, Jason, and my two grandsons. Oh, and Jason, by the way, he's the one in the middle with the beard. My grandson on the left is Emerson. He's 9 years old. And Lachlan is on the right. He's 6. This actually happens to be a picture of a mouse pad that I got as a gift from my daughter-in-law, Kelly. And I have it next to my computer at my house. It reminds me of my commitments to the environment. The scenes in the individual photos happen to be at one of the Adirondack lakes. We here throughout Central New York are truly blessed with a beautiful and nurturing environment. Mostly though, and more importantly, it reminds me of my commitment to my son and my grandson's future. So every morning when I sit down at my computer, I again am inspired to take action that will make a difference in our environment here in Central New York. They are why it's YesRAG for me. A year ago this past April, I attended the Citizens Climate Lobby conference in Troy, New York, and that was my introduction to environmental sustainability. The Citizen Climate Lobby is an international organization with over 400 chapters. CCL has a singular mission, and that's to have Congress pass a carbon fee and dividend act that will level the energy cost playing field and bring about a more sustainable planet. While I was at the conference, a gentleman by the name of Sam Daly Harris the founder of Civic Courage, gave a presentation focused on what the average person, you and I, can do to affect change in the world. As Sam skillfully made a point, I was touched to see that my own resignation and cynicism about making any difference with the environment, sustainability, climate change, global warming, governmental policies, however you wanted to look at it, when you look at the current condition of the climate on our planet. More importantly, I got to see that my own resignation and cynicism as an excuse for not being in action and a betrayal to my commitment and love for my son and two grandsons, Lachlan and Emerson. With that realization, a commitment to being in action was born, and the seed of ESRAG was planted for me. Please just indulge me for a moment and close your eyes. Thank you. Now, in your mind's eye, picture whose future are you committed to? Thank you. Why does a healthy, sustainable planet matter to you? Thank you. Please keep whatever came up for you or whoever showed up for you in your mind for the rest of our time together. About 40 years ago, I attended an event in New York City. It was called A World That Works for Everyone, with no one and nothing left out. I recall my youthful exuberance, getting up early that morning, riding a bus with my friends, arriving in New York City at Madison Square Garden, and seeing in giant words across the marquee, "A world that works for everyone." After 6 hours of rigorous inquiry into population growth, food production, governmental bureaucracies, and global delivery systems, my head was spinning. At that point, pretty much all of my youthful exuberance had gone. But as we were ready to leave, we were left with this. If you want a world that works for everyone, with no one and nothing left out, go home. Take a look around in your own backyard. See what's wanted and needed, and do that. Since then, I've looked to do just that with my life. In fact, it's really what led me to becoming a Rotarian over 30 years ago. As Rotarian, that's what we do. We look around in our communities and we see what is wanted and needed, and we do that. I applaud and acknowledge each of you for all your Rotary services to the communities here in our own backyard. After leaving the Citizens Climate Lobby Conference a year ago last spring, I did that. I looked around in Central New York in my Rotary backyard, and I discovered that although ESRAG was alive and active all around the world, it was not active here in District 7150. It was apparent to me that what was wanted and needed here in Central New York was an environmental sustainability Rotary Action group. Currently, as I mentioned before, our task force has grown to over 400 Rotarians. We have presented to over 30 clubs, you're being the 31st. And we've also presented to our sister clubs, our districts, in District 7120 to the west, and the Canadian New York District 7090 to our north. Our inaugural project, the greening of Central New York, was launched last Arbor Day. We've recently launched a Lyme and tick-borne disease project, and currently are developing a project entitled Climate Conversation Challenge. So we're to the cards. To keep the conversation alive, that climate change is Rotary's business, the district task force has adopted these goals. That every club see the ESRAG presentation. We managed to modify and implement. We're closing in on it, but still there's clubs that don't meet at all and don't meet virtually. That every club in the ESRAG has an ESRAG task force person. We're lucky to have Nikki as that person for your club. That the task force will provide educational materials for every club in the district. For those of you who might want any or all of that material that I showed in the beginning, you would have, had we met in person, you would have gotten your personal package. But if you indicate that you want those or to actually take the time to fill out in the chat box a response to this card, I'll be sure to have it sent to you electronically. Every club in the district will have an ESRAG task force team, and the task force will promote individual, club, area, and district environmental action projects. These goals will not only keep the conversation alive, they will also support a sustainable environment that nurtures our children and our children's children. This is the opportunity to take action. In many cases, I've had an actual poll that I could put up. So if you would use the chat box, and the card says, and if you respond in the chat box, you will become part of the task force. And it simply says, Rotary connects the world. Now it also opens doors to opportunity by taking care of our world's environment. As an expression of my Rotary service, I will. And there, even though there's not numbers there, if in the chat box your name will automatically be there. If you put number 1, you'll be saying that I'll be an advocate for a sustainable environment. Number 2 would be I'll be part of my club's ESRAG. 3, I will consider being part of the district ESRAG, and that's the leadership team. I'll educate myself around these issues would be 4. 5 would be a participating club or district projects. 6 would be create your own personal action. And this is the one I like the best. You know, you want to be part of this opportunity. You've got too many things on your plate right now, but you want to be considered and receive materials to the task force. So at this point in time, you're going to forego any action, but you will become part of the task force. So thank you for taking action in your personal commitment to Rotary service in the area of the environment.
So I'm stopping the screen share for a moment and asking that each of us enter our name in the chat box, followed name and email and phone number, and then followed by the numbers. And I'll put up on the screen a reminder of the different number. Well, wait a minute. There, this shows some numbers. So if you take a moment and review this thing and see see what appeals to you. You can put all 6 if you want, or just 7, or whichever numbers mean something to you. So I'll give you a few minutes to do that.
Peter?
Yeah,
Well, oh, go ahead, Mac.
So at this particular point in time, are you asking for individual members from the club to make a commitment to the district? Is that what you're asking?
well, if you would want to participate on that level, check that box. Otherwise, you can stay within the club. I mean, we were looking for people to engage on the district level, but you know, that's up to
Well,
you.
I guess I'm a little confused because I guess because I was hearing 2 things. One was a club-based commitment where there would be a committee and so on and so forth. But now you're asking for individual commitment. So I guess I'm kind of wondering, what is the end result here? Are we looking to get clubs to form small ESRAG program committees?
Yes.
Okay, so how do we do that as opposed to individuals?
Well, look, so I'm a member. As an individual, I can do all kinds of things with the way my family gets their electricity, whether I put light bulbs in. There's all kinds of ways you can reduce your footprint. But as a club, I'm a member of the Syracuse Sunrise Club. We have a tree planting project, and there's other projects. There's a project that's underway now. It's a multi-district project to do cleanup in the rivers and that flow into the Great Lakes. And so that's something we'll be hearing more about from our district governor shortly. Then these other things, educate yourself around different issues that can work both for your club and for your individual participation. Then if you were able to up your level of participation, so I'm active on my club level, and also I meet weekly with the leadership team, working on ways to develop prototype templates for different projects. I'm also open to giving presentations about the various solutions. There's an organization called Project Drawdown, which has 80 solutions that to reverse global warming. And so some of the projects we have, like the tree planting project, addresses one of those issues.
No, I hear what you're saying on the individual side. My question though was regarding the club. If the club, is there no formal way for the club to become or set up, or are you only looking for individuals?
No, we would like the club to designate a contact person that would communicate with it, through which the district could communicate about different projects that are open.
Okay.
So if you'd be willing to do that, that would be great.
Are you in a spot to take some questions?
Yeah, should we finish this section and conclude the presentation? So I'm gonna,
Sure. Yeah.
wait a minute. I'm a little confused here. Just a sec.
There we go.
That's right. Okay, here we go.
Then RI President
Oh,
Barry Rassin.
oh, shoot.
And that was my introduction.
I think you had, were you trying to end your screen sharing, Pete?
Pardon me? I'm trying
The
to,
Citizen Climate Lobby is international organization with over 400 chapters. CCL has a singular mission. Every club, in, if you would you, I take put number
If you
one.
drag your cursor down to the bottom of your screen, there should be an end screen share button.
Action, your personal commitment to Rotary service in the area of the environment.
okay, here we go.
Becoming informed and communicating are the core actions that will support Rotary in keeping the conversation alive. Let's listen to what environmental leaders have to say about communicating. It's communication that will make the environment and environmental sustainability an idea whose time is up.
I think scientists should really think carefully about the messages that they want to get across to people. And that takes some work. Most scientists have no communication training at all. And I think they need some so that they can do a better job of.
I'm not sure that we have the right screen up for what's going on.
I
Do we?
figured out a long time ago that climate change is the issue of our time. It's the issue that matters. If we want to make
Yeah,
sure
we're still stuck on the
children
slide
problem that they
about the
can solve,
climate lobby and the member
it's the most
locations.
important thing there is to do.
Well, you had a question, didn't you, Mike?
Important things is to know who you're talking
I
about.
did have a question if we're at that point where we can ask questions.
Go ahead.
I want to make sure you have time for questions, Peter. Is there a lot of time left in the presentation?
Okay, how much time do we have left?
I think now would be a good time to switch over to questions if that's okay with you. So if you don't mind ending your screen share, we can go back to the gallery view for the meeting and you can field some questions from the club.
Okay,
Thank you.
So this presentation mentioned a term that I haven't heard recently, and that was global warming. And that was a term that I heard going to school. And the message at the time was if we could just get rid of Aquanet and Freon, we would solve the ozone problem and global warming would end. And now there's this message out that no, it's not global warming, it's climate change. And there's all these other factors. So how can we be certain that did the numbers from global warming change, or did our interpretation of the numbers from global warming change? How do we know that these efforts that we're making now are having any impact?
well, I think the term global warming was kind of like a hot button issue, and it's a semantic thing that we've changed the climate change. The issue of how what we do impacts the climate is a little difficult, but there's an organization, I mentioned the organization Drawdown. They've listed 80 solutions, one of which relates to refrigerants. That's the top, actually one of the top solutions that would have the most impact is handling air conditioning and refrigerant chemicals. Anyway, so this organization has on their website, they have the amount of CO2 that's withdrawn from the atmosphere by the different solutions, and the costs of each solution, and the benefits, the costs to do something, and the cost savings that result from the different solutions. So I would recommend.
So this is like comparing Freon to 134A versus 410?
Well, I'm not sure the the chemicals things. We banned a bunch of chemicals related to the ozone layer, and that helped reduce the ozone layer. But now the new chemicals that we use are like 1,000 times more impactful to the global warming than CO2. So there's an effort to be able to manage the chemicals in air conditioning, and to do things when we retire air conditioners and refrigerators, to make sure that there's no leaks and that the chemicals are disposed of in a safe way. Anyway, that's just one thing. And then there's other efforts to create different chemicals, different ways of refrigeration and air conditioning. So that's a big solution that needs work. Anyway, so I don't know if that satisfies your answer.
I could
Well-
jump in here.
Sure.
So global warming was originally one of the first terminologies that was used because people were concerned about the ozone layer being depleted. And so it was causing global warming. And in that body of research, they realized that they had to expand it out, which is why they're taking out to climate change. Because of the ozone depletion, it was having a domino effect on the environment, and thereby really negatively impacting the status quo of the environment and the climate. And so we're having more harsh storms, more frequent storms, more flooding, more high powered lightning strikes, which are causing forest fires. So they're realizing that initially the global warming and people just focusing on the ozone layer, which was incredibly important, was not a big enough picture. And so they've taken it to a bigger platform. So people realize that the overall impact on the entire environment has to be addressed simultaneously, or we're going to be in really big trouble 50, 100 years from now. We're going to be in really bad trouble. And so
sooner than that, if we keep going.
Right. I mean, in 50, 100 years from now, the environment is not going to be anything like we recognize now if we don't start getting on this real quickly. And that's why a lot of I've been environmentally active for many, many years. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of organizations are pushing for the whole climate change initiative, so that they realize it's a bigger picture here.
There's things that I can see, and myself, I started a tree farm because that was something that I could see and I felt like I could do. Yet at the same time, I see, like down the road from me, a cornfield was being wiped out, and well, they did corn and soybean, that alternating, and now they're putting in a big solar array. But it seems like there's so many variables that go into our climate that for scientists to make these absolute statements that, oh, we're going to have big problems with that many variables, take something as small as the DDT problem, if you remember that.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, scientists said that was safe for everything. And then only years later, through enough studies, were they able to figure out that it didn't kill bald eagles, it softened their eggs, which led to the decline of the population. So now, like, it took us a really long time to figure out that DDT, with very few variables involved in the relationship with the bald eagle. But now scientists are saying with a certain amount of certainty that, oh yes, we're going to have these problems. And I'm wondering how what assumptions have to be made on that to get to that point, to know that what we're doing is effective. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, I think the understanding has changed. What Eileen was talking about with taking a step back and not having it just be global warming, but climate change, and have people realize that it's a comprehensive ecosystem that needs to be balanced as properly as possible. And it's not going to be just one solution that's going to fix everything. when stuff does happen, it needs to be thought of more comprehensively from start to finish. So when they replaced that field with a solar panel field, the thinking shouldn't have been, let's replace this field with solar panels to reduce our out-of-pocket costs and to use renewable energy. It should be, what will removing the field do to the local environment? Will this infrastructure have a negative impact on any wildlife? And will that impact on the wildlife have any effects anywhere else? Thinking
Yeah,
of it as like a domino
that's
effect.
my concern is now we're seeing with the windmills, there's no place to put those blades anymore. They don't decay, but when they crack to the point that they're dangerous, they've got to be taken down and they got to go somewhere. And
Yeah,
those things are huge. And now I'm seeing like fields of solar arrays, and I'm wondering to myself, are they going to go to the landfill when new technology replaces them? Is that a good thing?
Well, well, it's got to be a systemic, holistic approach. You can't cherry pick one thing. I mean, there are islands that are floating in the ocean that are plastic. Okay, plastic and other trash. I mean,
Yeah.
islands. All right, and we look at this stuff and we talk about reducing the footprint of plastics and the styrofoams and those kind of chemical-based things that we use for everyday purposes. But if you don't also get the manufacturers who produce these items and the down trend of things like the meat packing people who pack in styrofoam and so on and so forth, if you don't get them to stop using the product, okay, then it's not going to change. And I've been in third world countries, in the Philippines, as an example, an island that you got to go by boat after you fly there, that didn't have plastic straws. When you checked in to the facility we were at, everybody was issued a stainless steel straw. That was yours for the week that you were there, okay? And nothing was given to you in a plastic cup. I mean, here's a third world country, and we just can't get out of our own way because of the dollar. We're making too much money off this stuff. And until somebody comes up, you can't legislate behavior. It has to be based on, it's the right thing to do, and it's got to be based on the fact that everybody has to participate.
Well, one thing that
Otherwise, all you're doing is just sweeping the pile around, just moving it around the room.
one thing that's that right here in Auburn, we have the glass bottle company, the glass company, and they used to make beer bottles for Budweiser. Now they're making glass jars for multiple products because the environmental impact, and people are starting to speak up to the manufacturers who are putting ketchup and mustard and all these other products in plastic and saying to them, we're not buying your products unless you put it back in glass, because glass is recyclable.
Right.
And our local company, my brother's just been working for them for the last month and a half. There's numerous products that are now being converted back over to glass, and they've got the contract. So it's positively impacting our local environment as far as employment, but it's impacting the countrywide environment because the environmental push has been such that people are saying to manufacturers, we're just not going to buy your products unless you reduce the packaging. If you look back about 5 years ago, the amount of packaging on a store shelf for any given product was ridiculous. And because of the environmental lobbies pushing the manufacturers to saying, you don't need to have a plastic bag put in a cardboard box, shrink wrapped with plastic and shrink wrapped again. You need to just remove all this nonsense, this multiple layers of packaging. And they have, and it's helped the manufacturers because it's reduced their cost, but it's also been very beneficial for the environment because you don't have all these multiple layers of junk. And by people being cautious about just simply when you go to the grocery store, how do you buy your products? And if they're packaged in plastic, do you pay a few more cents to buy the ones that are packaged in glass? And do you take the time to write a letter, an email? Takes nothing to fire off an email to the consumer departments of all these different companies saying, I refuse to buy your product until you get it in a more environmentally friendly packaging. They get enough of those emails, the tipping point gets to the point where they realize they have to do it, and they do it. So I think that's, you know.
Good, Peter, we didn't mean to kidnap your program.
I invite you to schedule a presentation on drawdown for your club that will explore these 80 solutions and how whatever project we decide to do will kind of fit in a larger context of solutions to reverse global warming they talk about, which involves sometimes agriculture can be used for sequestering carbon from the atmosphere and all kinds of good stuff.
Well, I'll follow up with you after the meeting today, Peter, and we'll get that set up.
Thank you. It's great. Thank you for having us.
Thank you for the presentation, and you and virtual Chuck.
Yes. Chuck did a great job.